As I think we all know, we are involved in, one of the most serious economic crises in the history of this country. We haven't had an economic downturn as serious as this one since the Great Depression, which happened in 1929 and ran through the 30s. And one of the most interesting things about the way in which this economic recession has come about and continues is the failure, in fact, in many ways, the refusal of responsible people to understand what happened back in the 1930s and the relationship between what's happening now. The kinds of circumstances that caused that Great Depression, similar to the circumstances that are causing this deep recession that we are experiencing now. And it's only a recession because we have Social Security now, which went into place after the Depression in the 1930s as a means to sort of fight against that depression, and a number of other things which we're engaged in to try to deal with it effectively. There are a lot of people who are trying to eliminate some of those effective things. In fact, we had a president recently come in and say that we should privatize Social Security. I think we could imagine what might have happened if we had privatized Social Security and how much worse this economic recession would be today if the Social Security system had been privatized, and then certainly would have been lost. So this is a serious issue, and it's an issue that needs financial regulatory reform. And that need for financial regulatory reform has never been more evident for us in the context of our lives, and especially our experience here in this Congress. We are still feeling the effects of that meltdown, which began in 2007 and then hit hard in 2008 on Wall Street. And now, 2 years after that 2008 meltdown, we still have record unemployment, with roughly 15 million Americans currently out of work. Obviously, much needs to be done to deal with this, and recovered rather quickly, interestingly enough, while the jobs and housing market remain in life support. It seems that Wall Street was able to recover quickly because it knew the housing bubble was on the verge of bursting and hedged their bets appropriately. And they knew that the housing bubble was on the verge of bursting because of the subprime mortgages that they manipulated into the context of investing operations. They knew what they had done, and they knew what was happening as a result of what they had done. As we all know, the Securities and Exchange Commission recently made claims that Goldman purposefully created an investment, a collateralized debt obligation called Abacus 2007 AC1, that was designed to fail. The SEC suspects that a Goldman Sachs employee, and probably not just one, Goldman Sachs employees purposefully misled clients into buying investments that were not only worthless, but were almost guaranteed to have a devastating effect on the great economy. I have signed my name onto 2 letters that are aimed at expanding the investigation of Goldman Sachs. One of those letters is to the Securities and Exchange Commission Chair, Mary Shapiro, and the other to Attorney General Eric Holder. Goldman Sachs deserves to be thoroughly investigated for this suspicious activity. But we need to keep in mind that they are not solely to blame. It's not just Goldman Sachs that was responsible for this problem. Throughout the 1990s, there was unprecedented deregulation of the banking sector, which set the stage for Wall Street to run amok. Safeguards put in place in the 1930s to deal with that Great Depression were thrown out. And that is just fascinating, how intentionally that was done. Safeguards put in place in the 1930s, thrown out and unraveled by both Congress and the Federal Reserve. As they let this happen, some of us tried to stop the deregulation, but we were in the minority. We should not delay in getting common sense reforms passed that will increase consumer protections, regulate hedge funds and the derivatives market, and let us not forget to include a stronger Volcker rule. The Volcker rule, interestingly enough, puts an end to an investment bank's ability to conduct proprietary trading with their bank deposits. This proposal also prevents bank holding companies from housing hedge funds or private equity branches. The overarching goal is very similar to what I tried to achieve when I submitted a Glass-Steagall amendment to the House Financial Regulatory Reform Bill. Restoring the Glass-Steagall Act, which of course was passed back in the context of the Great Depression, would put back in place the clean division between commercial and investment banking that was first established in that Banking Act back in 1933. The original bill was put in place as a response to the Great Depression and resulted in decades of economic stability and prosperity. Throughout the 1990s, the banking lobby worked hard to undermine the Glass-Steagall Act, and it was ultimately overturned.